For nearly a decade, Hollywood fans have argued about one thing: the almost unreal chemistry between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. Directors, producers, and even co-stars dodged questions, insisting it was great acting or professional synergy. But deep down, everyone suspected something more, something unspoken. So when the director finally broke his silence in a recent interview, the industry froze. He looked straight into the camera and said, "I've never seen anything like what they had." His words sent shockwaves through the fandom. This wasn't a throwaway comment or a polite compliment. This was a confession from the one person who had witnessed every glance, every breath, every tiny moment between Jamie and Dakota on set. The director admitted he had avoided discussing their connection for years. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too real. Even cast members had whispered to him, asking whether Jamie and Dakota were acting or simply being themselves. According to the director, their chemistry didn't begin during filming. It started the very moment they stepped into the audition room together. He described the moment Jamie looked at Dakota, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. They didn't even touch, he recalled, but you could feel something electric. Within minutes, the entire team exchanged looks, silently acknowledging that this pairing was something extraordinary. It was as though the characters didn't choose the actors. Jamie and Dakota chose each other without saying a single word. He explained that their connection went far beyond technical execution. They didn't need direction on how to move, breathe, or react with intensity. Their interactions were instinctive, natural, raw. They were completely locked into each other, he said. The crew noticed how they mirrored one another's gestures unconsciously, how Dakota's eyes softened whenever Jamie spoke, how Jamie's body language shifted subtly whenever she entered the room. It wasn't planned. It wasn't staged. It was simply who they were around each other. The director revealed moments he had never shared publicly. Moments when Jamie and Dakota slipped into their own world even when the cameras weren't rolling. Sometimes they stood together between takes, whispering quietly, laughing at private jokes no one else understood. Other times they would step aside, faces inches apart, discussing the emotional depth of a scene with a tenderness that suggested something far deeper than professional obligation. The crew often stopped and stared without meaning to. It was impossible not to. One story in particular stunned fans. The director recalled a scene meant to be purely technical, something that should have required multiple takes. But when Jamie and Dakota stepped into position, their interaction became so intense, so emotionally charged, that the director let the camera run far longer than planned. "I forgot to call cut," he admitted with a nervous laugh. "I just didn't want to break what they were creating. It felt intrusive." The scene ended up being used exactly as it was. Unrehearsed, untouched, completely authentic. But the most shocking revelation was when the director said their connection didn't stop at the edge of the set. He described how Jamie would instinctively reach for Dakota's hand after emotional scenes, not because the script required it, but because he wanted to ground her. Dakota, in return, often leaned on Jamie, literally, during moments when the emotional weight became overwhelming. "There were times," he said, "when I genuinely couldn't tell where Christian and Anna ended and Jamie and Dakota began." When asked why he had stayed silent for so long, the director grew serious. He admitted he didn't want to disturb something so delicate, nor did he want to contribute to drama or speculation that could have harmed their personal lives. He respected both actors too much to feed public curiosity. But now, after years of watching rumors twist their connection into something sensationalized, he felt compelled to tell the truth. Not the exaggerated version, but the emotional reality he witnessed daily. He ended his statement with a line that echoed through Hollywood. "Their chemistry wasn't created, it existed." And with those words, he confirmed what millions of fans had been saying all along. After the director's initial confession stunned the public, he continued revealing the emotional depth he had witnessed behind the scenes, details he had held back for nearly a decade. He explained that Jamie and Dakota shared a level of trust that was almost unnerving in its intensity. They didn't just rely on each other for scenes. They relied on each other emotionally, instinctively, almost wordlessly. It was like watching two people breathe in sync, he said quietly. Something you don't direct, something you simply observe. The director admitted that their closeness sometimes made the team nervous. Crew members whispered among themselves, unsure whether they were watching performers or a real-life connection unfolding right in front of them. One assistant asked him bluntly, "Are they acting, or are they falling in love?" The director never answered, not because he didn't know, but because he believed some truths weren't meant to be labeled. What they shared was theirs, he said. And maybe that's why it felt so powerful. He recalled one day on set when Dakota broke down after an emotionally draining scene. The rawness of the moment overwhelmed her, and she stepped aside, visibly shaken. Before anyone else could react, Jamie immediately moved to her side. He didn't ask if she was okay, he knew she wasn't. He wrapped his arms around her, grounding her as she leaned into him without hesitation. The director said the entire room fell silent, witnessing a moment so intimate it felt like a secret they weren't meant to see. There were also moments where the roles reversed, with Dakota offering Jamie the emotional anchor he needed. The director described a day when Jamie seemed unusually tense, withdrawn, and struggling to focus. Dakota noticed immediately. She led him away from the noise, holding his hand gently as they whispered back and forth. Minutes later, they returned to set with a renewed energy, as if grounding each other had reset the entire emotional tone of the day. It was extraordinary, the director said. They understood each other's inner world without needing explanations. Still, he admitted that this intense connection came with its own complications. It blurred boundaries in ways that neither of them seemed prepared for. There were days when scenes felt too raw, too honest, forcing the director to step in, not to correct them, but to protect them. They gave so much of themselves, he explained. Sometimes more than the scene required. More than they realized. He believed their emotional investment left both actors with wounds and memories they carried long after filming ended. The director also revealed the moment he knew he would never again witness a connection like theirs. It happened during a particularly vulnerable scene, one that demanded complete emotional surrender. Instead of performing, Jamie and Dakota simply felt. Their voices trembled naturally, their breathing aligned, and their expressions softened into something that didn't belong to the characters. When the scene ended, neither of them moved. They stood there, foreheads almost touching, lost in a silence so deep the entire crew held their breath. Fans always wondered why the director avoided discussing their chemistry in public interviews. He finally answered that question. Because it wasn't something to gossip about, he said. It was something sacred. He admitted he feared that acknowledging it too openly would cheapen what he had witnessed, or worse, cause pain to the people involved. Jamie had a family. Dakota had her own life. The truth of their connection was too fragile to expose to the harsh judgment of the world. But he decided to break the silence now because, in his words, rumors twisted their bond into something ugly. He wanted people to understand that what Jamie and Dakota shared wasn't scandal, it was humanity. Two people connecting deeply while navigating a demanding and emotionally consuming project. They cared for each other, he said. Maybe more than they expected. Maybe more than they admitted. The director concluded his interview with a final, haunting reflection. If the world knew everything, they would understand why their chemistry can never be recreated by anyone, not even themselves. He paused, then added softly. Some connections happen once in a lifetime. Jamie and Dakota were one of them. And with that, he left the world both satisfied and aching. Satisfied to finally hear the truth, and aching to know the full story that only Jamie and Dakota will ever truly carry.